Nick, thank you for joining us again on the Publica CTV Explainer series. I think it's been just over a year since you last joined, and we had a great conversation about the European CTV landscape. From memory, you provided some quite coherent predictions. Can you just remind the viewers what they were and whether or not they actually came to fruition?
Yes, certainly. First of all, hi Paul, thank you very much for having me again. I do indeed remember that I provided 4 predictions. So yeah, let's remind ourselves of what they were and also where they ended up. I believe the first prediction was around the fact that I felt that there'd be more streaming apps and content providers that would enter into the CTV world, if you like. And I think we've certainly seen that over the last 12 months as a lot of content owners, a lot of content publishers, if you will, are really trying to own that direct relationship with the consumer. The second was around improved search and discovery. So with this advent of more apps, more platforms, more publishers, that in turn means that there's so much more content for consumers and audiences to discover. So there's a real need for better search and a user interface required. So when I think back over the last 12 months from a Samsung perspective, certainly we've created and upgraded our user experience and user interface in our TV menus on our 2022 TVs. It's now a lot bigger, it's full screen, and we've also included cloud-based gaming for the first time as well. Again, looking at what consumers are doing and how they're interacting with our TVs and providing benefits for that. The third recommendation I recall for this year was around improved data and targeting and measurement opportunities.
I believe it was.
And this is an interesting one because I do believe that there's certainly more data and targeting opportunities in the industry now. However, I think that the one piece that isn't quite there yet or hasn't evolved to the level that certainly the industry would like it to or needs to be is the measurement piece. I think certainly the need for an agreed unified measurement system that exists across all platforms and devices, and really to provide that one single currency, something that the traditional broadcast TV is used to, is something that would really help propel CTV forward. But of course, that's a very complex question to ask and very different to solve for. But I think that there are steps being made with regards to this measurement piece, but it's not there yet.
Yeah.
And then the final prediction I believe I made was around that there'd be closer alignment between the TV and mobile device. And I think when we think back over the last 12 months, what's interesting with this is I think there's been 3 areas that certainly have interested myself. One is the impact in the increase in usage of QR codes, which everyone used to laugh at in the past, but I think certainly there's suddenly become a need for QR codes, and consumers are now more used to using QR codes, and that provides a nice link from the TV to a mobile or tablet device. Secondly, if we look at someone like YouTube, and one of the new product features that they've recently launched, it's called the Connect feature, I think. And what this does is it identifies that you're watching YouTube on a TV when you open up the mobile app. And what that does is it provides you with the opportunity to control your YouTube experience on your TV via mobile. So in terms of the ability to then think about attribution of seeing a brand or a product or service on your TV and then being able to purchase seamlessly on your mobile, that's a really neat and clever way of doing it. I quite like that. And then the third area of that connection between mobile and TV from an ad perspective, certainly when in sort of the Samsung world, is when we look at household IDs and the household IP and device IDs has really helped to extend the reach beyond the TV. So for brands, what that means is you can continue the conversation with audiences beyond the TV once we know if they've been exposed or not exposed to any particular linear type style of advertising. So yeah, I think certainly those 4 predictions have kind of come to fruition in various forms, if you like.
Yeah.
But it's fair to say that the TV landscape has changed and will continue to change, which offers both challenges and opportunities to brands and advertisers.
Yeah, okay, agreed. And from the last 12 months, the ecosystem has been evolving very, very quickly in the US, in APAC, and more closer to home in Europe. What have been some of your kind of personal highlights that you've seen evolve from either the sell side or the buy side when it comes to addressable TV?
Yeah, good question. I think to answer this question, I think it's first important to start with the customer and work backwards to see how consumer trends have then affected our industry, because that's always a good litmus test. So I'm not sure whether you would call these highlights necessarily, but I think they're important factors in influencing how CTV, connected TV, is evolving, both in the US and across Europe. And then this is particularly important for any brand managers, marketers, or even agencies that are looking to dip their toes into the CTV world. And
Yeah.
The first thing I'd call out is the fact that certainly the cost of living crisis is having an effect, as consumers are really starting to scrutinize the number of subscription services that they're signing up to. So what this means is that audiences still want to be entertained. However, they're looking to save costs in all areas of their lifestyle, and certainly TV and entertainment is an area of that.
Yeah.
This has then led though to an increase in ad-funded video on demand, AVOD, and VAR services. Again, because consumers are looking to maybe substitute that subscription through ad-funded or free content services. Now, this is really important because, again, it leads to more ad opportunities to reach that wider or incremental new TV audience. So that's the first thing is if we look at the macroeconomic factors that are affecting the industry, then certainly the cost of living crisis. The second thing related to that is that this scrutinizing of the number of SVOD subscription services has then also led to a change in strategy for streaming giants such as Disney Plus and Netflix, who of course are now launching their own ad-funded tiers to really, I guess, from their perspective, help increase their ARPU, their average revenue per user. Now, again, the importance for brands, advertisers, and agencies is that this will then provide new opportunities to reach an audience across brand safe premium content at scale, which causes even more disruption, if you like, to this space, but I'd argue in a good way. And then the third thing I'd call out is again kind of related to this macroeconomic environment that we're in, because it plays so many factors about the industry and how it's evolving, is then the impact that it's having on planning and overall campaign costs, with budgets constantly being scrutinized, especially at the moment as we enter into Q4. And I think this also provides an opportunity for CTV, right? Because the costs within connected TV tend to be slightly lower, with a lower barrier to entry. And when you combine that alongside the flexibility and turnaround times and campaign optimizations, certainly compared to linear broadcast, AB, advanced booking deadlines, I think certainly that plays to the strengths of CTV in the fact that it's aligning with that kind of digital heritage, if you like. So it's getting the best aspects out of the digital connectedness of the TV. So I think those three things would be, like I say, not necessarily highlights, but things to consider over the past 12 months, which affects what we're doing day to day.
Yeah. Okay. And what about scale? Lots of panels over the last 12 months have really focused around inventory liquidity in Europe and whether or not there is now enough scale for advertisers to run programmatic or direct campaigns targeting streaming audiences. What's your kind of point of view on where we currently are? Is there now enough inventory to support advertiser demand when it comes to CTV ad buyers?
Yeah, great question. And for me, it's all about expectation setting. So the first place to start again is with consumers. And what we know is that consumers are buying more smart TVs. In fact, I don't believe that Samsung, I don't even think that we sell a non-smart TV anymore. And I believe that's the same for our competitors as well, but don't quote me on that. And with the advent of more smart TVs means that more consumers are exploring and discovering new sources of entertainment. And the way that I like to conceptualize this or explain this, if you like, is the smart TV is kind of evolved similar to a smartphone. So I don't know about yourself, Paul, when you first bought your very first smartphone, I would imagine it'd be similar to many other people, in that you get it out of the box, you connect it to the internet, and the first thing you want to do is explore the phone, but also jump into the app store and figure out what apps are in there that are going to delight you or add value to your life in some way, whether that's entertainment or through some kind of utility. You just want to explore it. And we're seeing that exact same transition from the smartphone to the smart TV now. As more consumers are buying smart TVs, they connect it to the internet, and it opens up this whole new world of entertainment without having to connect any other devices to the back of the TV, which is, is a really interesting concept when you think about it. Now, why that's important is that alone is providing organic growth and scale for the CTV industry. However, what we always know will hold true is that consumers will always want to watch premium content at their convenience on the largest screen in the house. However, when it comes to providing that brand safe premium content at scale, my view is that linear still remains the best place for advertisers to build a brand. However, when we then start to look at the continued fragmentation in that linear audience composition, then that's where things start to get quite interesting. Now, the reason I say that is for any UK viewers that are watching this, the recent Ofcom report in the UK highlighted that I think it was young adults are watching 7 times less broadcast TV than those age 65 plus. I think it was 7 times less, which is, if you take that insight and data point alone, you can see how audiences are fragmenting continuously, and we just need to keep an eye on that. When I think about certainly Samsung TV Plus, our fast service, free ad serve supported TV, we're seeing positive growth month over month, year over year. And I think the introduction of quality content such as things like America's Got Talent, American Idol, a whole host of new films and channels that are now on the service, that plays a part as well. And also, as mentioned earlier, the influx of Disney Plus and Netflix and their ad-supported tiers are going to provide more brand-safe premium content into the industry. So to go back to your original question, is streaming and CTV scale increasing? I would say yes. Is it to the level that brands and agencies are accustomed to on linear broadcast TV? Probably not. In fact, no, I'd say not yet.
Okay.
But for me, I think it comes down to your campaign goals.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you want to reach that light or non-linear TV audience, or those young adults, that's as per the Ofcom report, or you want to reach an incremental audience above and beyond linear, then for me, I think CTV is the perfect complement to linear. It's not to replace it, it's a good complement to it.
Okay.
And I think the main point here is it's really important to understand the data and these consumer trends in order to start to take advantage of them.
Yeah. Okay. So it's not necessarily about matching scale for scale. It's about incrementality and being a supplementary component to a linear TV ad buy, right?
At the moment, it is, absolutely. But again, going back to that original point with regards to as more people are buying smart TVs, if we start to see more direct-to-consumer apps and publishers come onto, platforms such as Samsung's and others that are out there, then that shift is going to start to continue as consumers are deciding on their terms. Again, that convenience point that I talked about, how and what they want to watch. So I think, certainly we're just going to see further disruption, but it's important for brands and agencies to keep up to date with that, to understand what the data is telling them, to then be able to make the rest necessary calls and actions.
Okay, makes sense. Thanks for that, Nick. I guess that leads us on nicely to our next question. You've used the term AVOD and FAST interchangeably so far. I know there's a little bit of confusion in market around how they actually differ. Can you just please explain to viewers what FAST is and how it differs from AVOD today?
Yeah, it's a very good question. It's one that, again, the industry loves an acronym, doesn't it? It likes to catch people out. But I guess I'll give you my view. And again, my view might be different to someone else that you ask. But for me, I think it comes down to two different areas. For me, the main difference comes down to cost. So one is completely free. So that's FAST, which is free ad-supported streaming TV. And the other is ad funded, but which is AVOD, so ad funded video on demand. But ad funded might not necessarily mean that it's free. So if you think about Now TV in the UK or Hulu in the US, you're still paying some kind of subscription, but there might be a light ad load. So for me, the element of cost is one aspect of it. And when we think about that cost aspects, certainly when it comes to FAST, there was a recent piece of research that we did with Verve Research Agency, which said that 2/3, around 69% of consumers believe it's acceptable to watch ads on their TV in return for free content. So I think the key thing is just to make sure that it's not too intrusive and you're getting the right balance of ad loads. The second aspect that differs between AVOD and FAST is the way in which that consumer is viewing the content. So AVOD, ad-funded video on demand, as its name suggests, is typically on-demand content, whereas FAST typically, or certainly traditionally to date, generally provides a more linear, pre-programmed EPG approach, which certainly helps to provide familiarity to users in that transition from linear broadcast through to streaming services. The one thing I would say though is that certainly these lines are becoming blurred in terms of how people are accessing it, because even though our Smart TV Plus service was set up as a kind of traditional EPG linear style format, we also offer on-demand services, and it's very similar with our kind of FAST competitors, if you like. The lines are starting to become a little bit blurred. The way I like to think about our own FAST service is that it's a collection of hand-curated channels that have been handpicked with some kind of specific audience or audience mindset in mind, which is very similar to how you might think about a playlist on Spotify. You want to be entertained, you want to watch the news, you want to be educated, you want to watch a documentary, very similar to your mood state when you want to listen to music. So going into TV Plus, the different channels that exist is almost a different mindset, if you want, which then becomes interesting for advertisers and how they want to think about engaging with those audiences.
Okay,
does that help? Does that?
Yeah, no, that's really helpful.
Answer your question?
But my kind of personal takeaway from that, Nick, is one is very much like traditional television. You sit down and you watch the programs that are pre-scheduled and they're playing. You don't have any choice around the actual content that's being delivered. And right. To CTV viewers today, that's free. There's no cost there. It's ad supported. Then the alternative to that would be the AVOD, where it's you want to watch an action film or you want to watch a romantic film. So it's video on demand. And there's hybrid models of that at the moment. Some can be free or some can be ad light, where you get served minimal ad loads, but there's still a kind of cost transaction for you to engage with that. I think that's really helpful. Thanks for that, Nick. So changing gears slightly, privacy and identity. CTV thus far has pretty much operated outside of the identity headwinds. It's mainly app-based. There aren't any third-party cookies. The operating systems that power many televisions are very different from those powering the display and mobile ecosystem. However, television manufacturers and streaming apps still have to adhere to their local privacy regulations if they intend to use data to inform targeted advertising. Samsung Ads recently put out some PR talking about your adoption of a consent management platform that deal with the IEB transparency and consent framework. And I think you were one of the first, certainly from anything that I read in the trade press, around taking that really kind of tailored approach to how you manage data. Can you just shed some light on how a CMP actually works in a TV environment? Because I think that concept is pretty new to most people in advertising.
Yeah, do you know what, that's a great question, and it's really important. And I guess the first thing to say is that we have always and will always won't shy away from our responsibilities as a consumer electronics manufacturer to obtain the right consent in a compliant manner. And really our aim with that is to provide complete confidence and trust, not just to our users, but also to any agencies and advertisers that also want to use our services. So from a consumer's perspective, we want them to feel in control of their own data and how it's being processed. Secondly, from an advertiser or agency perspective, really want to provide that reassurance that our audiences has consented to see a targeted or relevant ad. It also provides reassurance that we have consented to use specific third-party measurement and verification vendors as well. So currently we have around over 350 vendors supported within our CMP. Now, CMP stands for Consent Management Platform, another acronym just to throw out there. And we use the OneTrust Consent Management Platform, which has led the market as the most widely used according to the IAB, which you just mentioned. And really, what we're trying to do with that consent management platform is for users to provide their consent for us to use their data. Now, the way that it works is in three ways. When a consumer buys a Samsung Smart TV from the retailer, they take it home, they put it out the box, they connect it to the internet, and there's a setup process. It's a 3 or 4 stage setup process. So one of those processes, I think it's step 2, is to opt in and provide your consent with regards to data usage. The second method is around when you first start to watch TV Plus, or if you go into the TV Plus settings menu. And then the third is a privacy choices app, which we created to provide complete visibility and transparency for our users. So even if you've purchased your TV and maybe you've forgotten the privacy choices that you signed up for, by having an app, we want to provide that transparency for users to always have a point to remind themselves to go back and check to see what they've originally signed up for, or even if they have signed up for a specific allowance of their data, they can go in and change it. And we want to make that as easy as possible for them. Now, the next thing that's really important is that when selecting their preferences, the users must double opt in order to be consented for us to use that data. Now the double opt-in is based on 2 things. One is device-based consent, which is interest-based advertising. And then the second is around app-based consent. And that, as you mentioned earlier, is to provide the IAB's standardized transparency and consent framework, TCF 2.0. And so by doing all of this, what we're doing is providing greater security, trust, and transparency, again, not just for consumers, but also for advertisers, which is really important in this privacy reliant world that we now live in. So for any brands, marketers, agencies that might be listening to this, certainly asking the questions from your publisher partners with regards to what their privacy policy is probably a good question to be asking at this point in time.
I think that's really interesting. And to your point, Nick, there's still a lot of confusion on the buy side around how privacy and consent actually works in CTV. So that context is really helpful. Thank you for sharing that. And it sounds like what you're doing at Samsung Ads is quite groundbreaking from the adoption of a CMP perspective. Again, I haven't read too much in the trade press at the moment around other kind of manufacturers or OEMs taking that approach yet. So that's fantastic to hear.
Thank you. No, we're very proud of it. And yeah, we'll continue to make sure that we're doing all we can in this area.
Yeah, great. Okay, so slightly aligned topic, but the subject of measurement. Again, there's lots of debate in the industry at the moment around what the currency of TV should be, whether or not the way that we've measured audiences yesteryear is right for the new age of addressable TV. Whether it should be panels, its impressions. One area that we're starting to hear a lot about at the moment is ACR data. My understanding of that, it stands for automatic content recognition. I know Samsung Ads talk a lot about the power of ACR and what you have from a proprietary perspective. Can you just shed some light on what ACR data actually is, what it means for you guys, and more importantly, how it can feed into that wider measurement narrative that the industry is trying to tackle at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really good point, and it goes back to something I said earlier with regards to measurement in general. And again, this is our proprietary technology within our televisions. But as you mentioned, ACR gets bandied around quite a lot at the moment, and it does stand for automatic content recognition. And really, it's an identification technology that captures and identifies content across internet connected devices in real time. So what's clever about this technology is it detects everything from programs, channels, video games, all the way down to actors and actresses. So a good example of that last data parameter, if you like, is we had, I think it was a couple of years ago, a global leading luxury brands wanted to target TVs that had watched specific actors and actresses who were brand ambassadors for this luxury brand. The premise being that if an audience had watched that particular type of content with said actors and actresses, then clearly the brand's done their research to identify them as brand advocates, which is why they've chosen them. So that's probably the audience that should see their ads. And yeah, it was, well, from what I've heard, it was a very successful campaign. But when you think about that level and granularity of targeting, actually that starts to get really interesting.
Yeah.
But the reason why it plays a crucial role in measurement, and certainly potentially for the future, I think really comes down to the fact that it is a one-to-one deterministic data set at scale, rather than the modeled or more representative view, which you quite rightly called out. So I think certainly that one-to-one deterministic point is really important. I think the one thing to note, however, is that it is at a device level, not at an individual level, which is where it can start to become a little bit confusing.
Okay.
So, we try to be as transparent as possible with that. But again, when you think about that one-to-one deterministic aspect at scale, that starts to give you a really good view of how many television households, let's say, audiences, devices, are being exposed to either your linear ad or not exposed to your linear ads. And that's really the benefit for advertisers is, certainly any heavy linear TV advertisers we can provide a measurement in terms of, who has been exposed, reach and frequency, and then target incremental users or retarget those audiences that have been exposed to carry on the conversation, but within a streaming environment potentially. So yeah, does that help?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, that helps to clarify a lot. Thanks for that, Nick, again, because it's something that I keep hearing crop up quite a lot personally when I'm out on the circuit speaking to publishers, agencies, or an event. People are talking more and more about ACR being that pivotal component that potentially can inform the future of TV currency and measurement. With that in mind, have you got any kind of top line trends that you can potentially share around viewership behaviors? Because if ACR data can inform behavioral patterns, do you see that kind of information as well? Does that then go on to shape some of your audience segments or the insights that you pass back out to the buy side?
Yes, no, absolutely. And kind of highlighted it with that example with regards to the luxury brand using actors and actresses. We can start to create and define segments based on audience viewership. And then from a sort of kind of holistic perspective, in terms of planning purposes, I guess, if you like, we can look at or segment based on ad-funded, AdVOD viewership, BVOD viewership, fast viewership, linear viewership, and then that can be segmented further down again. Okay. So if we look at the differences between, let's say, AVOD, ad-funded video on demand, versus fast, free ad-supported streaming TV, and SVOD subscription, that starts to get really interesting. Because obviously, if you think about subscription services, they tend to be non-commercial environments. So if audiences are spending a lot of time in these environments, then how can a brand or agency engage with them? So again, it goes back to what I said earlier about understanding the data and what that means for a particular advertiser. So if we look at our current data set, I think the first thing to call out is that from a Samsung perspective, when we look at the data, we define YouTube as AVOD. Now, it's really important to call that out because, the scale of YouTube can skew the numbers somewhat. However, certainly AVOD's share of time has increased significantly over the last 12 months, whereas SVOD viewing, again, as mentioned earlier, probably due to the cost of living crisis, we've seen a slight decline. Now, we've also seen an increase in free ad-supported streaming TV, FAST services, of around 9% between H1 2021 and H2 2022. And we expect that trend to continue, certainly, with question marks over the cost of living crisis and what's going to happen there. So there's still plenty of room for growth. And I'd say that, certainly fast adoption and stickiness is very positive currently, not just with ourselves, but from what I've read and heard about our fast competitors out there in the market. And again, I think we're just set to see that continue. And certainly as we see a shift in quality content coming onto these services, that's going to play a big part as users constantly searching for free entertainment options.
Great. Okay, thanks for that, Nick. That's a really helpful overview of how ACR data is working, and more importantly, what it means for the advertisers looking to increase their investments in addressable TV over the next 12 months. Talking about the next 12 months, so we've already covered off your predictions from a year ago, and whether or not they've come to fruition. What are your predictions for the next 12 months? Where do you think we're heading collectively as an industry at the moment?
Oh, good question. I think the one guarantee that I can commit to is that there's going to be more disruption and change over the next 12 months. I'd say the areas that excite me the most and the ones to keep an eye on are firstly, well, three things. Firstly, I'd say the increase in gamers and games usage. And what I mean by that, or the importance of it, is I think one of the biggest media habits to be formed during the pandemic, which hasn't really shown any signs of going away, is gaming. Now, if I look at our own data, we saw an increase of around 28% of time being spent in gaming environments over the last 2 years.
Wow.
With an average time of being spent of around 1 hour, 24 minutes per day. Now, if we take a step back and look at those specific gaming audience and who they are, what we could see is that they spend around 80% of their TV viewing time either in streaming or gaming environments. So you could argue they're quite a hard to reach audience to approach and go after. Now, with the advent of Samsung's new cloud-based gaming service built into our TV menu, we certainly expect to see new types of gaming audiences enter into this space and really start to disrupt the attention economy even further.
Yeah.
So certainly the gaming vertical, I guess if you want to call it that, is one to keep an eye on over the next 12 months.
Yeah.
I think the second would be creative executions. And I think, when we think about what CTV Connected TV offers, because it is connected to the internet from a digital perspective, I think we haven't really seen much innovation specific to that environment. So I think I would like to see a lot of more testing and innovation around new CTV formats that really help to engage and tell stories that evoke an emotional response to a brand, which is something that sort of traditional linear TV ads have been brilliant at for years. So an evolution of the creative that sits within CTV, I'd like to see evolve. And then I think thirdly, I think we'll start to see more direct-to-consumer apps and platforms with some of the more Western American publishers coming over to Europe, and in turn probably looking at ad-funded tiers within what used to be a subscription environment.
Yeah.
So again, I think with that not only brings challenges in terms of engaging audience because it provides more further fragmentation, but what it does do is open up more brand safe premium quality content at scale, which ultimately means that there's more opportunities to reach various different audiences. So I think we'll see just a continuation of that evolving over the next 12 months. So I think the main thing is if you are to take anything away from this conversation, is that really you should start embracing CTV if you're not already, and really dive into the data, try to understand what the data is telling you to take advantage of it. Certainly don't see it as a challenge, see it as an opportunity, because this thing certainly isn't going to go away. It's just going to become more important in consumers' lives. Yeah,
I couldn't agree more. Thank you very much for that, Nick. That was really helpful. Hopefully we get the chance again to sit down in another 12 months, review those predictions. I imagine there's going to be a lot of innovation, certainly from the new apps launching, search and discoverability data. Hopefully we'll be a little bit better informed around what's happening from a measurement perspective. But thank you again for taking part in the Publica CTV Explainer series. And I look forward to catching up with you soon, Nick.
You're more than welcome. Thank you very much for having me. Thanks, Paul.